I introduce to you Dr. Grace Dammann. And the director of this film, Helen Cohen. So the routine is pretty simple. We just want to invite you to be in dialogue, share your thoughts, ask your questions, and of either the director or the star. And I'll repeat the question so you can all hear. The question is, how old is Sabrina and what's she up to right now?
She's about to turn 25. She will turn 25 on May 25th. And she's living in Los Angeles. She works for a special needs Jewish foundation, and she loves it. She's always wanted to be in Hollywood, and she is in Hollywood now. Who, I might add, is the abbess at Green Gulch right now.
So your questions can be either to Grace or to Helen. That's why they're both here. Yes. How did they find each other and then make a decision to make a movie?
That's such a nice way of asking the question. How did we find each other? So Grace and I have been close friends for, we figured, over 30 years now. And I've been a documentary filmmaker for a long time, but we would never have been able to make this kind of film or, approach it in the way that we did had we not been close friends. And Mark Lippman, who's the other producer, director, and the cinematographer and the sound recordist, is my husband. And so he was basically the entire crew, and Grace just said he moved in, and we both kind of moved in. Mark actually didn't know Grace or Fu very well before that time, which was in some ways a blessing because he was a little bit more objective, and it was leading up to the decision to make the film was also kind of fraught and difficult because Grace was in such terrible shape, or it was just whether she was going to live or die. That was the beginning of it, and then through the entire year she was in the hospital. I mean, she was amazing, and we knew that it was kind of potentially this really powerful story, but it was also very painful and trying. But it was Sabrina's idea to make the film. Actually, it was the day that Grace came out of her coma, which happened to be July 4th. About 6 weeks after the accident, we were just by coincidence taking. My daughter grew up is just a little older than Sabrina, and they grew up as friends. So we had volunteered to take Sabrina out to the county fair that day, and Grace had just woken up. And by the end of the day, she said, "I think you really should make a film about my mom." But as the story we like to tell is that Sabrina really, Grace just said she always wanted Hollywood. She really wanted Sally Field to play Grace and for it to be a big blockbuster, Hollywood film, and that we would all get rich on the story. But she participated, we filmed. I'll just say a little bit more about kind of the making of it really quickly so you have a sense of how. So we started filming the day Grace was released from the hospital. And so there was no filming for the entire first year after the accident. We just had photographs to work with. And then we had no idea what was going to happen. We just jumped in. And Mark, in particular, did that first shoot and was just kind of hooked. And we just followed what was happening. It was very much an observational, it was very much a labor of love because these guys just were very trusting and let us, be observing and involved. Mark followed you around. Grace would sort of introduce him. This is my filmmaker, when she'd go to doctor's appointments and everything. But we ended up filming for about 4.5 years and had about over 200 hours of footage that we ended up editing for about 7 months. And I'll also add that one thing that we did early on was we gave Fu a flip cam, and she turned out to actually have a lot of videography skills and just a sensibility um, about interviewing, about capturing footage. So there are a couple of scenes in the film that were shot by her, where the scene in the car, where there's sort of a close-up profile of Grace, and she's talking about losing her best friend. That was shot by Fu. And then also we got these gems of the whole Sabrina adoption story, with that beautiful footage of when she came home as a little baby. That was filmed by Grace's brother-in-law, her sister's brother, who just had this spectacular home movie footage that we were able to weave in to the story. So yeah, I'm happy to take other questions about the making of. But
Few of us had lunch together today, and John was raising the question as to whether this could be a feature film, and we were thinking if Sally Fields was not interested, who might be? And I suggested Meryl Streep. We'll see what's going to happen with that. Other questions for either Helen or Grace? Talk a little bit about how your practice helped you come to terms with everything.
Well, you've been to Green Gulch, so you know. We do a lot of 7-day sittings, meaning we sit still for 7 days at a time. And day 4 is horrible. Everybody feels like they want to kill themselves. I mean, the pain is horrible. The psychic pain and the physical pain are just horrible. You would think to yourself, why am I doing this? Why? I have no idea. You know, then all of a sudden everything switches and it becomes very easy. Well, I've done a lot of sashins, so I really had the experience of nothing lasts forever. And I think I said that. Nothing lasts for very long at all. Everything changes always. And that is the truth of human existence. So I was really totally well prepared. And also I like hospitals. That made it much easier. You know, after all, I spent much of my life inside of a hospital as a provider. But so I actually loved being in the hospital. Every time there was a code blue called initially, because I really had head trauma. So I lost my executive function. So I would always call the operator whenever a code blue was announced. And I'd say, I didn't really hear where the code blue is. She'd say, Grace, you're not here as a doctor. You're here as a patient.
add one little thing about this, the practice question, which if Fu were here, and we've done many of these Q&As with Fu as well, she talks a lot about how, and she's been meditating for decades and very seriously as a Zen student, that she would always kind of wonder about the word practicing. What is it? People would say, ask her about her practice or practicing. And she said when this happened and she had to become a caregiver, and the whole experience made her really feel like, okay, this is what I was practicing for. Like all of the practicing kind of led her to just have the presence of mind. I mean, not all the time. She certainly lost it. Everybody loses it at times, but that her training as a priest really held her in good stead.
Yes.
Well, it was really interesting. That's a great question. I must say I woke up. When I finally woke up, I thought to myself, you have been a rotten parent to a daughter who's got major disability. Because not only did she have CP, but she's also HIV infected, which she decided to come out about in the process of making the film. She was born that way. She was born with perinatal HIV infection. And everybody else in her cohort has long since died. Anyway, So I got my real comeuppance psychologically, internally. And I thought, you had no idea what it was like, what it's really like to be disabled. Um, and that's all I can say is I had no idea. So it's really helped me as a physician. I now have a real idea. And I really, as a parent, it's totally made a difference because I now have a real idea. And I give her, it's not that I give her the total benefit of the doubt, but I know how much work goes into just doing everyday activities. She never thinks of herself as disabled. She's, I would love to have a driver drive me around. You've got a driver. I would, she never thinks of herself as disabled. But in fact, she isn't compared to me. She's not disabled. And she's had to learn that it's different, to have it come on. I learned how to surf on my 50th birthday. On my 60th birthday, I learned how to be a patient. It's not fun. But, I'm not depressed that it happened. And I think what I've gotten to do, now the Golden Gate Bridge has a barrier on it, or the film got made, and I certainly am a different physician than I ever was before. My only thing is everybody who's practicing medicine better really love what they're doing, because that's all we have to give to our patients.
Yes, sir. Navigating the healthcare system and the problems that presented.
I mean, I'm a trained social worker in the old days, so I really should know something about navigating the healthcare system. I also was a good self-advocate. And we really laughed a lot. That happened pretty much every day. And it took at least two of us to make all of those calls. So navigating the healthcare system is one of the biggest gifts you can give a friend who's in this position, is to just sit there while they have to navigate the healthcare system. It's a horrible job. But luckily, I had the best insurance money can buy. I was covered by the city and county of San Francisco. Inadvertently, I had a great retirement, which I never anticipated, never wanted, never thought about. But I'm really glad I had it. The director of public health gave me 3 months of his paternity leave. Every other doctor at Laguna Honda and within the city system. So they donated about 2 years worth of full-time pay to me. So I really did fine relative to most people.
But I can say that just the amount, we have scene after scene, tons of footage of those kinds of phone calls that we just, did 30 seconds of. In this, it was just like relentless administrative and advocacy stuff related to not only the insurance companies, a lot related to the insurance companies, but just, the lawsuit. Grace was involved in a lawsuit brought against the Golden Gate Bridge so that there had been other lawsuits, but they had been resisting putting up a median barrier for decades that would have saved her, it would have prevented her accident. Her accident, by the way, happened because a driver in oncoming traffic just had he had a previously undiagnosed heart condition, and he passed out at the wheel and crossed over. And there are these crossover accidents that were notorious. And then Grace did a lot of advocacy and work. The lawsuit was thrown out, but right after that, the Bridge Authority voted unanimously to get the barrier put in, and Grace was part of the ribbon cutting with Nancy Pelosi and others, at that ceremony. It was very, very powerful. And we had, footage we didn't actually film that, but there's a lot of, she became friends with the person who hit her. That was a whole piece that we thought might be in the film at one point, but there were a lot of threads that were just pretty amazing through the whole the whole process. But and the advocacy and the, I mean, partly it was advocacy, but it was also everybody that took care of Grace in these hospitals, including the woman who, you know, the physical therapist who Grace kind of breaks down with when she has that setback. I mean, they were all kind of like volunteering to help Grace, even if the insurance ran out, or even if this happened or that happened. So people really, really rallied um, for her, and not everybody has that luxury. So it's hard to make a comparison.
I'd love to hear more about the friendship you formed with the other person involved in the accident. Can you say a little bit about that?
He wrote me, I think, as soon as I woke up, there was a letter from his family to me. And I thought it's much too soon for me to see him, both for him and for me. Mostly I was thinking about it for him, because I knew by that point that he was a father of a 2-week-old at the time of the accident. And, you know, he didn't want to see me. I mean, no kidding. Seriously, can you imagine anything worse? I can't imagine anything worse than to have felt like you caused that kind of accident. I didn't cause it. So I didn't have, I mean, I was in the wrong place at the right time. I was part of causes and conditions, but I didn't do something drastically wrong. It wasn't on my phone. I had to go back and check my own phone records. I looked at the police report. I just wanted to know whether any of us had been in violation, you know, how much fault each of us had. So anyway, he kept wanting to come. And finally, after I went home, I invited he and his mother and his 2 daughters. By then he had a second child because it was like 12 months after the first one was born. So he came out with his sister, his mother. His mother lives at my senior facility now. She's right down the hall. I eat breakfast with her every day. You know, and it was really sweet. But anyway, we held hands crossing the bridge one day to go and give thanks to the bridge district when they finally decided to put up the median barrier. And it was fun. You know, he didn't mean to do it. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time, too. And, you know, ironically, the director of public health took care of him in the hospital because he went to San Francisco General. I had to be airlifted out to Walnut Creek because there is no trauma facility in San Francisco. There's not a heliport because Mitch, you know, the director of public health, refused to build a heliport. So therefore, I had to go. And I reminded him when he called me up to say, Grace, why was I taking care of him and not you? That, Mitch, you had something to do with that. You refused to let a heliport be built at San Francisco General.
I'd love for you to have some conversations with the president. Yes, Catherine. I think everyone heard that. Okay.
So the question is about Isabel Allende and how she came to speak at Sabrina's.
Isabel is my daughter's step-grandmother. She's married to Sabrina's paternal grandfather, or maternal grandfather. And Isabel isn't anymore married to that guy, but at that time, that was how Sabrina came to us, was because Isabel knew Pauline. So they were sitting around the table day when Isabel was deciding that she couldn't take Sabrina and saying who should Sabrina go to. So they all decided she should come to us. So she's really the matriarch of sorts in our family.
So she stayed very involved and continues to be very involved with Sabrina and with the family.
We have a few more minutes. John? Second thoughts about the whole process of the film.
Well, certainly there was a point at which we were all asking ourselves, how is this going to end? Is it going to end with me killing myself? Is it going to end? How can we make it dramatically good, not dramatically bad? Anyway, so that was, but basically we all, Sue and I were of the mind that we didn't want to exercise any kind of restraint on Mark and Helen. I did want them to take out one shot. I wouldn't let them include my brain shot because I thought that was too risky from a legal perspective, just because I've got 3 obvious brain bleeds. So I just thought city and county attorneys don't want to see that. So those were never put in. And then, I can't remember what, oh yeah, I thought there was that one picture where my arm is in a constant motion machine, my jaw is hanging down, and I think that's such an ugly picture. I kept saying, Helen, can't you just knock that scene out, please, please? But that's as close as we came. And very much the way Fu and I looked at this is it's their story of our story. And, you know, the film kind of made itself. It's really a work of love on all of our parts.
Grace likes to say, sometimes in answer to that question, that when we asked her about making the film, she was brain damaged and she was saying yes to everything. So that's how it got started. But I do have to say that it's really unusual as a filmmaker to have subjects who are as trusting and you know, I mean, there were very, very few times where Grace or Fu or any of you said, turn the camera off or get out of here. I mean, there were 1 or 2 times where we showed up, we were like, uh-oh, you know, okay, what's going to happen? Including the day that we got that incredible scene and very painful thing to film, you know, behind that's the bathroom with the curtain and we walked in that day and Grace was just in a foul mood and, you know, we did an interview with her initially and it was just kind of going nowhere and we said, okay, let's stop this. And we went in and started interviewing Fu in the living room. And at one point, and so Fu had a mic on, and at one point Grace called from the bedroom and said, you know, she needed to go to the bathroom. And so we were waiting and then we started hearing this argument developing. And just, I remember Mark kind of being like, can we just film this? Is this, you know, and we just kept rolling. And then that scene actually behind the curtain goes on for a very long time. I mean, we edited it down, but there was just a lot of openness and trust. And I'll say that, you know, for me as a director and the person that did all the interviews, because Mark was filming, and the person who was longtime close friends with Grace, there were times where I felt like, what the hell am I doing, you know, or this was just too much and too hard to be on both sides of, you know, the divide, I guess you could call it. And there was particularly, I mean, Grace said, you know, we were always waiting to figure out when it was going to end or how it was going to end. And we had all kinds of fun, fantastical ways that we thought it might end, but we really didn't know what was going to happen. And then in the edit room, there was probably, I don't know, a couple of weeks at the end where we were trying to finish the film, and I was just a basket case. I really felt, and Grace was having a really hard time at that point. We went back and did another interview with her because we needed some more material. And we both looked at each other at one point and we were like, this is a horrible movie. What are we doing making this movie? You know, this is not the movie we should. And it turned out actually that last interview was used, I mean, it was beautiful you know, material that we got. It was very emotional and really hard, but we got through it. And I think both of us were nervous about the ending and about how. I mean, Grace worried that she was going to come off as pathetic or something like that, that was never ever my concern. But I think the idea of just this being a useful film, that there being hope and some inspiration, that it wouldn't just be an utter downer for everybody that saw it. So we kind of had to do that dance, but I'm very gratified that really everybody, you, Fu, and Sabrina, all all like the film, and it's being used. I'll just say a word about the fact that it is really being used in medical education and in rehab hospitals and social work. And we've done a lot of screenings, theatrical screenings like this, but also are starting to do more grassroots distribution in healthcare arenas, and it's really a great resource for those communities. And I think Grace's goal for this would be that that something good would come out of the accident and come out of telling her story. And I think the film has made that happen. So.
You used the word fun just a moment ago, and I'm mindful a little bit of the value of humor in terms of healing. I'm wondering if you would just say a word about that, having spent a little time with you today and knowing you have a wicked sense of humor, just how that has helped, and maybe then a closing comment about your wonderful hair.
My wonderful. I'm starting with that. Look at my head. I've turned 71 in 2 weeks. So I thought I've always wanted pink hair. And so I decided I was going to go and get a dye job this week. So this is my pink hair.
I was suggesting it might be cream and crimson, but we're very happy to be among the first to see this.
Anyway.
And a word about humor.
Okay. So Fu she's so funny. Sabrina is so funny. I am sometimes funny. But luckily, Fu saved my life on many occasions just because she made me laugh. And, you could see, I think in one of those long shots, I think in the car, when I'm talking about how depressed and I finally say there's something really funny about this. That always happened. But it only happened because Fu would take the time to really get me to laugh. And I could always see something in the end as being really hysterically funny. I mean, including this whole thing. I still think it's a very, 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 very funny that this should have happened. I still have no understanding, but it's fine that it did.
Can I just add one little, I can't, compete with that, but I can say that Grace is very funny, but also we've been having a lot of fun doing this, and Grace is very committed to just like having a good time and, smelling the roses, and it's been, incredible process to kind of had a great time here. Yes. And I will take the time now to thank you, Doug and John and Brittany and others here. I mean, this is incredible cinema that you all have as a resource here in your community. What a wonderful place to screen the film and a great audience. And we feel we've been so welcomed and taken care of. So thank you all. And we've had fun.
I think I speak for everyone here. A very worthwhile time together. We've been touched by Grace.